Hey guys, this is me. Brody's is the Zebas here. I'm gonna show you.
Me what I got on. They be like, hey Brandon, what you got on? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry about it, sweetheart.
Invis is everything braces isn't. More comfortable, fewer emergency appointments. Invisalign.
They work faster than braces.
Millions of pizzas travel daily from the frozen food section of the supermarket to the family dinner table. Thick or thin crust, meat or vegetarian. Their convenience makes them a staple in the freezer. But how do they end up tasting so fresh when they start out so frozen? Making frozen pizzas requires a maze of machines. To make the dough for the crust, they combine flour, salt, sugar, water, yeast, and oil in a large mixer.
Yeast?
And they throw in a bit of cornmeal for flavor.
Oh.
The mixer turns the ingredients for about 4 minutes. This is one powerful machine. A truck transmission drives the steel bars that knead the dough.
A dough. That makes pieces.
The dough rises for about half an hour. Then they feed it into a chunking machine, which divides the big blob into smaller pieces.
Did you see that, guys? No.
The chunks travel to a sheeting machine that rolls them into a flat sheet 1 inch thick. A light dusting of flour keeps the dough from sticking to the machinery. A series of rollers called quick reducers gives the dough an even consistency. A flour brush massages the dough, ensuring a smooth surface. Next, stainless steel spikes pierce the dough with holes about a 1/4 inch deep. These holes will stop air pockets from forming in the dough.
Oh, yeah.
A large plastic roller with several round forms cuts the circular shape of the pizza crust.
Did you see that, guys? Shapes. It's called circle and round.
The machine automatically separates the leftover dough. The factory remixes it with fresh dough for the next batch. A conveyor takes the dough circles to their next destination, the oven. They bake for 2 minutes between 390 and 600 degrees Fahrenheit. 6 chambers inside the oven automatically control the temperature pattern to ensure that each one bakes evenly. Next up, the tomato sauce. A tank pumps a steady supply of sauce into a reservoir, drenching a roller turning inside. A plastic board then scrapes the sauce onto the crust passing below. The excess sauce drips down, replenishing the reservoir. Mounds of pre-shredded mozzarella are ready to be added. A cheese applicator machine controls the output so that the mozzarella forms an even layer. Large hoppers load heaps of pepperoni, sausage, and other meat toppings into a meat applicator. As with the tomato sauce and cheese, the meat toppings cascade down on the pizza crusts. The pizza is now ready for inspection. Workers take samples off the line and weigh the crust, sauce, cheese, and meat to ensure the equipment dispensed the right amount of each. Next, the pizzas enter a spiral freezer called a blast cell, where they spend about 20 minutes at minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit. An overwrapping machine applies a clear layer of plastic around each pizza, automatically cutting the wrap to fit. A vision control system takes a picture of every pizza, verifying the size, diameter, and checking for any imperfections. The machine automatically rejects any less than perfect pizzas by air blasting them into a separate tub. Finally, an arm pushes each pizza into a waiting box. All that's left now is to heat it up and dig in.
The future waits for no one, so we refuse to wait for it. Today, battles are waged in nanoseconds, and planes are piloted from the other side of the world. The future's not coming, it's already here. Join us and be the future.
Alright.
This factory makes chocolate in various forms and sells it to companies which manufacture chocolate products for retail sale.
Just like
It also supplies chocolate components such as cocoa powder and cocoa butter.
butter.
Most of the cocoa beans arriving here come from West Africa, which grows 70% of the world's crop.
That's chocolate.
A conveyor belt moves them through a cleaning system, a series of sieves that screen out twigs, stones, and other debris. Next stop is a micronizer, a revolving drum that heats the cocoa beans to loosen their shells.
Cocoa shells.
Then they enter a shell removing machine called a winnower. Inside, successive rakes drag the beans across screens, pulling off large pieces of shell. Then, a vacuum sucks away the remaining smaller pieces. Removing the shell exposes the inside of the cocoa bean, which is called the nib. The factory will roast the nibs to develop their flavor. 50+% of the nib is fat, which is cocoa butter. To make chocolate, they'll combine processed nibs, cocoa butter, and sugar, along with milk powder if they're making milk chocolate. First, the factory processes the nibs by grinding them. The heat and friction activate the cocoa butter, producing pure liquid chocolate called chocolate liquor. The factory extracts some of the cocoa butter to sell it separately as chocolate-making ingredient, and to use for in-house chocolate production, along with other ingredients in various proportions. The dark chocolate recipe, for example, calls for more chocolate liquor, sugar, and cocoa butter, but no milk powder. The recipe for unsweetened chocolate contains no sugar. The mixer blends the ingredients to the consistency of a very thick cake batter. The flavor is fine by this point, but the coarse texture needs to be smoothed out. So the chocolate moves to a refining machine, passing between a set of 5 rollers that reduce the particle size, so much so that within just minutes, the chocolate leaves the refiner as a fine, dry powder.
Chocolate powder.
But now, it needs to be reliquefied. So the next stop is a machine called a conch. The friction and heat once again activate the cocoa butter, returning the powder to a liquid state. At this point, they add more cocoa butter, enough to reduce the viscosity to the exact thickness they need. Just a bit, for example, if they're making chocolate chips, or much more if they're making a thin chocolate coating.
Ooh, chocolate chip.
For chocolate chips, the conch feeds a machine called a drop depositor. As the name implies, it deposits drops of chocolate onto a conveyor belt. The nozzle trays are interchangeable, so the machine can be set up to produce various sizes of chips, discs, or other shapes. The chocolate chips, still warm and soft, enter a cooling tunnel, traveling for about 5 minutes through several temperature zones, which vary between 30 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. By the time the chips exit the tunnel, they're hard. A conveyor belt then takes them through a metal detector, a standard food. The factory also standard food safety precaution. The factory also produces 10-pound bulk format chocolate bars. A depositor fills bar-shaped plastic molds. The conveyor transfers them to an elevator system, which moves through a cold room for about 2 hours. This constant motion ensures optimal air circulation, helping the cooling process. This company adds a modern twist to the classic whoopie pie recipe. In addition to traditional chocolate and vanilla, the company makes 4 other all-natural flavors. The ingredients are certified vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free. Begin by making the chocolate cakes. The first ingredient is water, followed by apple cider vinegar. Then they add either canola or sunflower oil. They mix the liquid ingredients in a large bowl. Then they add the dry ingredients, starting with tapioca starch, bean flour, and sorghum, a gluten-free grain. Next, they mix in cocoa powder, granulated cane sugar, and light brown sugar. They run the mixer at a very high speed to incorporate air in the batter. This will make the cake lighter and fluffier.
That looks like black.
After about 4 minutes of mixing, the batter is ready.
Chocolate.
They test a sample using a viscometer, a device that measures the thickness. If the batter is the right consistency, they pump it through a hopper into a multi-head depositor.
See? Chocolate.
Each of its 5 nozzles shoot 1 ounce of batter onto a moving baking sheet. A finished sheet contains 7 rows of batter. Workers load multiple sheets of batter into an oven. The sheets rotate for 15 minutes at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, evenly baking the cakes.
Oh, yeah.
The precise combination of ingredients allows the acids in the apple cider vinegar to react with the cocoa powder. The result is a perfect little chocolate cake that's rich in flavor and moist in texture. The main ingredient for the filling is shortening. It's made from sustainable palm oil. This means the palm trees were responsibly harvested.
A big mixer.
They mix the shortening well,
What a big
incorporating
mixer,
enough
guys.
air to make it light and fluffy. Then they add powdered cane sugar and organic rice milk as a dairy-free substitute. The rice milk makes the frosting creamy. For vanilla frosting, they simply add pure vanilla extract. This is a batch of raspberry frosting, so they add pure raspberry extract and beet juice for color. When they make mint frosting, they use pure mint extract and alfalfa extract for green color. Lemon frosting is made from pure lemon extract and turmeric for color. They check the shade against a color chart to ensure the correct flavor. The multi-head depositor drops frosting on the baking sheets in the same configuration as the batter. Then they assemble the final pie. Workers start by placing a piece of cake on top of the frosting. They press down hard enough to spread the frosting just shy of the cake's edge. They cover the top with a sheet of parchment paper, then place a baking sheet on top and flip it over. Remove the top baking sheet and the parchment paper. Then they carefully place the second cake onto the frosting. Workers roll the trays of whoopie pies into a cooler, where the desserts chill for about 15 minutes. This hardens them so they won't get squished during packaging. Workers place the whoopie pies on a conveyor belt that leads to an automated wrapping machine. It wraps double printed packaging around each pie and seals them underneath.
After this one, we'll watch the last video.
Then the machine cuts the film between each pie. The next machine packages 4 sealed whoopie pies per retail box. There are 0 preservatives in these whoopie pies. They're shipped frozen to the grocery store and sold in the freezer section. When it's time for a treat, simply let them thaw to room temperature and enjoy.
Wow. hot dogs.
Hot dogs are an all-American
This is the
fare,
final
but
video.
most likely it was German sausage makers who first came up with the idea. In fact, there are reports of German immigrants selling them from push carts in New York's Bowery as far back as the 1860s. A century and a half later, hot dogs are still the #1 treat on the street.
Hot dogs.
Traditional hot dogs
Pork
are
meat?
made from a mix of pork, beef, and chicken. The cuts they start with are called trimmings, pieces of meat left over from cutting steaks or pork chops.
What the? Not bad, huh? It is not bad.
The trimmings are ground the same way butchers chop up hamburger meat, by pushing the cuts through grated metal plates.
You can see with the science.
Processed chicken trimmings are added to the ground meat, followed by food starch, salt, and other flavorings. These flavorings vary depending on where the hot dogs are to be sold, because people in different regions have different tastes. Processed chicken trimmings are added to the ground by pushing the cuts through grated metal plates. Processed chicken trimmings are added to the ground meat, followed by food starch, salt, and other flavorings. These flavorings vary depending on where the hot dogs are to be sold, because people in different regions have different tastes. Water is sprayed into the mix, and everything is blended together in a big vat. Corn syrup adds a dash of sweetness. The addition of even more water helps to disperse the ingredients and make the hot dogs juicier. Another machine then purees the meat batter into a fine emulsion and vacuums out any air.
Meat. Guys, they're meat. They're
Long
totally
rolls of cellulose tubing are loaded into the stuffing machine.
Hot dogs
It pumps the meat puree into these casings, twisting it every 5 1/4 inches, the length of one hot dog. It takes just 35 seconds to make a chain of hot dogs that would span a soccer field twice. Then, 3 of those hot dog chains are linked together to make an even longer string, and they're loaded several at a time into another machine which drapes the hot dogs onto moving racks. The process is carefully timed so that a twist always lands on the bar. The racks shunt the hot dogs through a liquid smoke shower, then into an oven with several cooking zones. The liquid smoke seeps through the casing and adds flavor to the dogs as they bake. Hot out of the oven, these franks are drenched in cold, salty water to chill them in preparation for packaging.
Hot dogs are totally yummy.
The hot dogs then file down to an unloading zone. Here, a machine pulls them off the bars onto a conveyor. Then, the hot dogs slide off the conveyor into metal containers. If you've been wondering about those black stripes on the casings, all is about to be revealed. The stripe is a marker attached to the casing. The absence of a black stripe means the hot dog is cooked and ready for packaging. Inside the peeler machine, a tiny knife slits each casing along the top. Then, steamy air blows the casings right off the dogs. This machine peels 700 hot dogs a minute. An inspector makes sure the casing has been completely removed and that there are no defects in the dogs. Then, it's into a device that looks like a plastic bicycle chain. The sprockets position the hot dogs for packaging. This factory manufactures an incredible 300,000 hot dogs an hour. That's close to 2.5 million per shift. They really do churn them out like sausages. Fire up the grill and a mouth-watering meal is just minutes away.
Oh, that's delicious. Alright guys, this is the final video. I'll see you guys later see you guys later, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. See ya.